Everybody,
Part of the master plan, I said.
welcome to the Sierra Vista City Council work session for May 13th, 2001. And I'll call the meeting to order. I'll just note that we have, Ms. Pacheco is not here, but we have the rest of the council, just so we've counted noses. Item number 2 is the presentation and discussions. The first is the 2A is the city council meeting for May 13th. Did I say May 13th? It is May 11th today.
That is correct.
So May 13th, council agenda. After the call to order, the roll call, and the invocation and the pledge, we have the acceptance of the agenda. And then the city manager's report. Mr. Patuchik, is there anything you want to enlighten us about today that we'll hear about again in more detail on Thursday?
Well, we have some big bids coming in, and obviously we've had some issues with some of those bids, so I'll be able to give you a little more detail on those Thursday. Not great news, though.
Okay. Item 2 is the consent agenda. And the first item is the approval of the regular city council meeting minutes for the 22nd of April. Do we have any additions, corrections? Any comments?
Thanks, Brian.
We were all confused, Brian.
Throwing stuff at me.
Okay, any additions, completions, or corrections, comments, discussion on the minutes? Next item is on the consent agenda is a utility easement, granting of a utility easement for Sulphur Springs Valley Electric Cooperative. Was it pretty straightforward, or do we need some staff explanation?
Straightforward as far as.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it was good.
Did you want to address this, Sharon? You look like you have something to say.
No, it is very straightforward. It's an easement for Sulphur Springs Valley Electric Cooperative for the Kenyatta Vista subdivision.
And that's so they can complete the construction
Correct.
in the ongoing subdivision, okay? Then we have 2 items where we're designating Mr. Felix to sign for certain things. I guess it was last year, year before, there was this change in the state law that requires us to do these 2 actions. And all we have to do is have a motion, names the person that fills that responsibility. So it's pretty straightforward too. Next, we have a public hearing item on the Code of Ordinances declaring a 30-day public record. It says Ms. Adams. Is yours?
This is mine.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Mayor Mueller, members of council. As you're aware, the process for moving and creating city laws is a multi-step process. This is actually the final process. The codification is simply placing the laws that you have passed in the last actually 2.5 years into the city public record, and they will be printed. We carry a few hard copies of our Code of Ordinances. They will be printed and put in those books. This, like I said, just makes those officially part of the public record. It does not in any way affect their effective dates. The ordinances, absent a declaration of emergency, go into effect 30 days after you vote for them. And so all of the laws, despite some of these from 2019, they were effective back then. This has nothing to do with that. This is merely an administrative step to close the book on all of these ordinances. And if approved Thursday night, it will be open for 30 days. I've never received a comment whatsoever on these. And it will then come back to you as another ordinance and will be finalized, and we will officially close the book on those ordinances and start new.
Okay, and this is by a statutory requirement as well?
Absolutely, yes, sir.
Okay. So, any questions? All right. Next item is Development Code Text Amendment. Mr. McLaughlin.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, members of council. For the record, Matt McLaughlin, Community Development Director. Staff is seeking your review and comment on a proposed amendment to the Development Code concerning the establishment of a recreational vehicle park overlay district. An overlay district essentially superimposes additional or modified requirements or land use allowances upon a base zoning district, which in this case applies to the Manufactured Home Residence District, or MHR. The amendments provide a regulatory pathway for large park owners to increase the number of recreational vehicle spaces beyond the 30% cap in the code. The overlay essentially sets up a hybrid option that allows an owner to flex spaces between recreational vehicle and manufactured home use on an interim or long-term basis to respond to changes in market demand. This provides an owner with the protection to convert or revert without putting their entitlement at risk. The current regulations require an owner to rezone all or a portion of a manufactured home park property to the standard recreational vehicle park district to lease more than 30% of the overall spaces within a manufactured home park for recreational vehicle use. The RV district does not permit manufactured homes. Therefore, if the demand for RV drops, the owner would have to go through a second rezoning process to revert the property back to the MHR zoning district. As stated in our memo, the impetus for the city drafting this overlay district is to help facilitate the redevelopment, revitalization, and repositioning of manufactured home parks that have been a source of blight for many years. 4 parks, as you may be aware, on the West End have changed ownership in the past year with a combined inventory of 800 spaces. Site managers are in the process of identifying and rehabbing manufactured homes that are worthy of preservation and demolishing and removing the old dilapidated pre-HUD mobile homes, which is the preponderance of units. This cleanup effort has resulted in vast swaths of empty, idle, non-revenue producing spaces. It's likely going to take an extended period for the manufactured home market to fill those spaces. RV use can help bridge the gap. Moreover, the reorientation of a residential park to RV use with supporting amenities will offer an additional option in our community for tourist accommodations, which furthers our economic development strategy. The RV park overlay would be assigned through the regular rezoning process involving a public hearing before the Planning and Zoning Commission and approval by the mayor and city council. Each application would be evaluated against the city's review criteria to ensure compatibility. With respect to development standards, no more than 1 RV unit is permitted per approved space, so therefore the overall approved density of the park will remain the same. Each space needs to be clearly and permanently marked with a space number. Fire pits are restricted to designated communal areas. Community and laundry and shower facilities shall be provided if the number of recreational vehicle spaces exceed 30% of the overall spaces in the park. And this was a point of discussion with the Planning and Zoning Commission. We further specified that at least 1 washer and dryer per 25 spaces is required, along with 1 men's and women's shower is required per 50 spaces to meet anticipated usage. Moreover, storage units containing a volume of no less than 180 cubic feet shall be provided for 25% of the designated recreational vehicle spaces when the number of recreational vehicle spaces exceeds 30% of the overall spaces within the park. The storage units may be placed individually on the space or consolidated within a structure located within the recreational vehicle designated area or common area. With respect to landscaping, screening, and buffering, a minimum of 10-foot wide landscape buffer is required to be maintained along exterior property lines, adjoining a public right-of-way, exclusive of permitted driveways, pedestrian openings, or any significant feature to be retained. If the exterior boundary does not have a wall, a continuous hedge using shrubs that reach at least 6 feet in height at maturity may be used as a screening device unless an alternate plan is approved by the city that provides an equivalent amount of landscape buffering. Street trees are required to be spaced 50 feet on center, which is also required to be installed upon the rezoning. The West End Commission has been briefed on this proposal and have expressed their support. The Planning and Zoning Commission held a public hearing and voted unanimously to approve the amendments. And again, their feedback has been factored into the proposal before you. And you have a letter from Good Living Ventures in support of the overlay. And Ben Wieldy, their architectural and planning manager, will be attending the meeting on Thursday to provide further comment. So the requested action following Thursday's meeting is to place Exhibit A into the public record for a 30-day public comment period. The ordinance will be scheduled for adoption at your June 24th meeting. And with that, I'll answer any questions.
Thank you, Matt. Questions for Mr. McLaughlin? Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Couple questions. First, 30% in a manufactured home zone. Is that consolidated in one designated area? It's not mixed throughout, right?
Right. So prior to 2018, the cap was actually 10%.
Okay.
And we raised it through an ordinance change to 30%. And so what the provision states is that no more than 30% of the overall spaces within a manufactured home park can be used for recreational vehicle purposes. It does not specify that they need to be grouped together, but typically that's what happens.
Okay.
You'll see, a row that is designated specifically for RV use within a manufactured home park versus scattered sites throughout the park.
Okay, because
And that makes sense, especially if they're required
Roger.
to put the showers
Yes, sir.
and storage and all the other amenities that he mentioned in one location. Obviously, the people that are paying for the rental need to have easy access to that stuff.
Roger. What concerns me is if at any time they can come back before us or back before you, the zoning committee, to have it rezoned back to manufacturing homes. If I have an RV on there and I'm over 30%, what does that do for me? You understand my question?
Yeah, so this regulatory option would help basically allows an owner to establish an RV park within a manufactured home park as a primary or secondary use. So you wouldn't have to
To go
go
back.
back
Okay.
through the rezoning process.
Okay, thank you, man. That's it, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, sir.
How did we come up with one washer and dryer for 25 spaces and one shower stall per 50 spaces? It doesn't seem adequate to me. I know a lot of these RVs have plush bathrooms and all that, but, where did that number come from, Matt?
It came from market research that was provided by one of the manufactured home park owners. So in addition, there will be showers associated with the pool, bathhouse. So the shower facilities will be in addition to those provided with the pool.
Okay. Additionally, this Good Living Ventures, they have 4 parks, right?
They own 3 of the 4 parks that were acquired last year. Sierra Grande, which is the property that they are specifically focused on in terms of converting primarily to recreational vehicle use to test the market. And if it pans out, they'll continue with that model. They also purchased Mountain View off South Carmichael, as well as Garden Canyon Mobile Home Park.
Okay, but you have an idea of which one they're interested in looking at specifically?
Starting with, yes.
Now, what other amenities are they going to provide, like a clubhouse or a convenience store, or is any of that in the planning?
Yes. So Sierra Grande has facilities in place. They do have a permit request to build the shower facilities.
Okay.
And laundry facilities. The other parks, Mountain View, they do have a permit to rehab the clubhouse on that property. And if they are able to lease up additional sites within that property, they will, they're considering adding a pool in the future.
Okay.
So it's important to increase the economic viability of these parks so they have more money to invest in additional improvements beyond what's in place today.
And hopefully they'll reinvest it.
Exactly.
Okay, that's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome.
All right, thank you, Matt. Appreciate it.
Okay.
We'll now move on to item number 5. A grant, accepting a grant from Arizona 911. And I'm looking for Ms. Papa Trayvon. Oh, she's okay, there she is. You were hiding behind the screen. We're not in my direct line of sight, so thank you for being here.
Even
Yeah.
money.
Good afternoon, Mayor and members of council. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to present the following resolutions. 911 services allow callers to dial a standard nationwide number to reach emergency services. The calls are specifically routed to the nearest public safety answering point, or PSAP, through a standalone network. Each PSAP incurs monthly fees for uninterrupted service and continued equipment maintenance, replacement, and software updates. In my role as the Cochise County 911 System Administrator, we have secured a grant in the amount of $415,529. This funding has been allocated to the Cochise 911 system by the Arizona Department of Administration State 911 Program Office. It is intended to cover the costs associated with monthly fees, equipment maintenance and replacement, and software updates for each PSAP in Cochise County. This award covers the period of fiscal year from July 1, 2021 through June 30, 2022. Are there any questions about that specific?
And it's coming before us for knowledge or for the fact that we're the fiscal agent for the,
Because the city of Sierra Vista is the fiscal agent for Ccom.
excellent, okay.
And I also have a secondary, which is a separate project.
Yeah, we'll do that in just a second. Any questions on this grant? Okay, now we'll move to,
I have a question.
yes, ma'am.
So are we approving it then as fiscal agent? I mean, because we're not the board.
Well, the board has also approved it, right?
I don't know if it's actually gone before the board, because this is a
That's
separate
fine.
thing.
What's the
from-
requirement?
Because it's
What's the
for the
question?
whole county 911 system. It's not just specific to Ccom.
Yeah.
But because I'm a Ccom employee, the city has been the
Chuck,
fiscal
what's
agent
the answer to
holding
the
the
question?
funds.
Well, it's coming to you because it's more encompassing than just Ccom. So-
Okay.
Okay,
So it's the entire county, as Susan just mentioned.
thank you, sir.
Okay, and that's the same case in the next one, too.
Does
Okay.
it get put into our budget? Does it get put into the city's budget? Does that make sense?
David?
Mr. Felix is, yeah.
Thanks, David.
Brief history. Historically, when any county, any agency within Cochise County had any of these invoices and bills, they were sent to the state took care of them. About 2 years ago, Ms. Papa Trifon got notified that the state was no longer going to do it that way, but she, as the administrator, had to apply for the funding for all of the 911 services in the whole county. As the agent, you don't vote on the actual expenditures of this fund. It's an agency fund reported in the financial statements. So the revenues and expenditures of reimbursing and covering these other agencies' costs do not affect our budget at all. But it is reported in our CAFRA as required to be the fiscal agent.
And it's 100% reimbursed,
It
grant,
is,
right?
it is
So
completely, and it's, as mentioned, because it is all agencies, not just Ccom. This is actually not in the Ccom budget either. It is presented in the agency fund in our financial statements.
Okay.
Which is why the board doesn't vote on it.
Yes, and as the fiscal agent, we are the ones required to accept the grant.
Okay. Clear as mud, right? Okay.
Good
All right,
question,
thank you,
though.
David. No, it's a good question.
Understandable.
All right, then we'll move on to item number 6 again. Mrs. Papa Trayvon, please.
So the evolution of 911 has had to continue growing as technology has become more and more sophisticated. With over 80% of 911 calls being placed from a wireless device, it is crucial to have updated Geographical Information System, or GIS, data to ensure call delivery to the appropriate call center. In my role as the Cochise 911 System Administrator, we've secured a grant in the amount of $79,576. This funding has been allocated to the Cochise 911 System by the Arizona Department of Administration State 911 Program Office. It is intended to fund contract services with Datamark, a company specializing in public safety GIS data management, for GIS improvement and ongoing address data maintenance. Data Mark's validation, edit, provision, or VEP tool, as they call it, facilitates data aggregation, preparation, analysis, and maintenance of address data contained in the Cochise 911 system. This award period was actually beginning April 1. They just didn't send the contract for us to sign, and it ends March 31 of 2022.
Thank you. Any questions on this grant application? All right, well, thank you very much. Appreciate you being here again.
Very much for your time.
Okay. We now move on to item number 7. A grant from the State Parks and Trails Lands, Water Conservation. Yes, ma'am, Mr. Fassar.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, this agenda item will authorize staff to apply for a grant through the Arizona State Parks and Trails Land and Water Conservation Fund. Staff has applied for Arizona State Parks grants for a variety of parks improvements in the past and has found them to be a good match for city projects. This particular grant is focused on water conservation. If the grant application is successful, the funding will be applied towards irrigation improvements at the Veterans Memorial Park Sports Complex. The existing irrigation system at the complex is antiquated and non-functional. By repairing the adjacent well at Veterans Memorial Park and replacing the irrigation system and converting the football field to artificial turf at Veterans Memorial Park Sports Complex, significant water savings can be realized over the life of the facility. This work will also prepare our infrastructure in those areas for all of the future planned improvements while avoiding private water utility costs by connecting to our well. The total estimated cost of the project is $3 million, and the grant, if approved, would award a maximum of $1.5 million. A 50% match is required, so the city's contribution would also be $1.5 million, plus a 6% surcharge to reimburse the state for their costs in administering the grant. Matching funds have tentatively been budgeted in next fiscal year, pending the outcome of the grant application. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have, and Laura can also answer any questions in regards to the project or parks-related issues.
Thank you, Mrs. Fassar. Questions for Mrs. Fassar? Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If the grant application were denied, we're budgeting to put the well in anyway, correct? Or have we not?
So we were discussing that yesterday afternoon, and David can fill in any details. The way we're going to budget that is as a financed project. So if we do get the grant, we have the grant match. If we don't get the grant, we can still proceed with a smaller portion of that project.
Okay, thank you.
Chuck?
Yeah, and Mr. Mayor, members of the council, soon you'll be presented the Parks Master Plan per your strategic planning process, and this project would be part of that overall Parks Master Plan, so it would be an implementation portion of that, and a good example of what we would try to do to implement the entire Parks Plan by seeking grants to help us offset the costs. So when you see those numbers, note that we have these opportunities. Also, getting back to what Victoria just mentioned, you raise a good question, because that's a large grant match number to place in the budget, and it essentially freezes or fences off that money and precludes us from using it. So by using the technique that she described, we won't run into that problem.
Good. Any other questions? Thank you, Ms. Fassar. All right, then we'll go on to the item B on the agenda, which is presentation on the Ccom budget.
Good afternoon, Mayor, members of council. For the record, Commander Chris Heiser, Sierra Vista Police, also the acting Ccom director. And it's my pleasure to present this afternoon the fiscal year 22 Ccom budget. Same presentation was given to the County Board of Supervisors last week. So I'll go through just a quick PowerPoint presentation and then answer any questions you may have. This is obviously just a picture of the Ccom Dispatch Center, and the reason why I like this photo is as it's tied into the budget. You see there's a lot of technology in Ccom, and technology is not it's not inexpensive. So you'll see that's a major big ticket item we're dealing with year to year in the Ccom budget. But we have some good news, kind of looking down the road on some of these technology expenses. But what this relates to is just a superior service level coming to the citizens of Cochise County for emergency dispatching services. Our mission statement, I'm not sure how many people are aware of our mission statement. We really haven't published it, but it's actually something I want to share with you. Ccom serves as the vital link between the citizens of Cochise County and the public safety community for preservation of life and property as we perform with professionalism, courtesy, and compassion. And our Ccom organizational chart. This is important as it ties into our personnel budget. This particular organizational structure was approved by the Joint Powers Authority Board a couple years ago, and it's been in place since then. We have one Ccom director. I'm currently just the interim. We are pretty close to narrowing down on a new permanent director. 2 communications shift supervisors. And so on the left-hand side there are your operations. We have 2 communications shift supervisors. Those are 2 new positions we created last year. And I will tell you, having in the director's position, those 2 assignments are vital to success in that organization. They basically run the operations and handle a lot of day-to-day stuff that the director just may not have time to address. A lot of it's involved in training, the implementation of ProQA, and just all the personnel matters that come with an organization. But above all, good leadership. That's what's important. We're funded for 20 full-time dispatchers. We also have part-time dispatchers. We are currently at just a little over 50% staffing right now. We are currently recruiting very heavily. In fact, you'll see a recruitment video coming out soon to try and market Ccom and the public safety dispatcher position as a profession. And then I'll get into that a little bit in the personnel budget. We have one records clerk that was approved. That was a new position a year ago. That has also been a tremendous help. That particular position takes some of the admin burden off of the 911 dispatchers. So during downtime, sometimes the dispatchers are having to enter warrants or do a lot of other paperwork. And as we implemented ProQA, which is the emergency medical dispatching, there's a lot more time spent sometimes on the phone, providing life-saving measures over the phone. So to take some of that work off and put it on a full-time clerk has been really beneficial. It's really helped the efficiency of the agency. On the operations, on the administrative side, we have one Ccom administrator, which you just met, Mrs. Papatrafan. She is also a project manager, and I will tell you, it was great that what she just presented segued into this presentation. What we are finding out is that regional communications, that's the way of the future. That's where a lot of organizations, a lot of municipalities, governments are moving toward regional communications, public safety communications. We're finding that there's actually a lot of grant opportunity out there. And so one of Mrs. Papatrafan's jobs is actually to seek out those grant opportunities, and she's doing very good at it too. She's finding money to help us fund this, and she will continue to do that. And on top of that, she is the administrator for a lot of special projects that we just couldn't implement or get done without her. Emergency medical dispatching has been quite an endeavor to implement in our organization, and she is actually the project lead on that, and it's a full-time assignment. She's doing an outstanding job. That position also, we are working into budgeting and some other areas of responsibility as well. And then under her is one position, it's the GIS rural addressing position. That was a position that came over from Cochise County government, and we are actually starting to look at that particular job description and see where we can make that fit within that Ccom mission.
Commander Heiser, you got 2 supervisors, shift supervisors.
Yes.
They normally supervise 10 people each if in fact the how many, I want to know is how many communicators do you have on the shift?
Okay, so at any given time, we have 4 to 5 dispatchers on a shift.
On shift.
At a given time. And so they're not necessarily supervising all of them at once. And ideally, it would be nice to have a structure where 10 of them fall under one supervisor, 10 fall under
that's
another.
why I'm asking the question.
We're not, Mr. Mayor, we're not quite there yet because right now we're hybridizing their schedules, and so they both have an equal span of control over all of the dispatchers.
Okay, got you.
Yeah, and that's more for supervisory availability right now, but that's a move we'd like to grow to at some point. little bit about the fire entities we serve because.
Oh, yes.
Question,
Yeah,
sorry.
just-
Referencing the paper article that was I don't know, a couple weeks back or a week back, you have a volunteer dispatcher. You have how many volunteer dispatchers do you have?
Okay, let me correct that. That was misinformation
Okay.
in the news. That is a part-time dispatcher, and that was supposed to be fixed by the.
Because I was like just really
newspaper.
surprised to hear that.
He's a part-time. I will tell you where the confusion lies in that that employee has been a volunteer in the past, both
Okay.
in the patrol.
He's a great
ranks
guy.
and-
I've worked with
Yes,
him.
he is.
He's a wonderful
But he's
person.
actually a part-time employee. That's
Okay.
set the record straight on that.
Okay,
Um,
yeah, it said he was volunteer dispatcher. I thought, wow, don't they have to have like a
Certification. everything like that.
certification or something?
And it's a stressful job
And
to
a
volunteer
really
for that.
stressful to volunteer for that.
Yeah,
Wow.
but nobody came
He's an
forward and said, "I
amazing
want to
person.
volunteer too." After that article, it didn't get us anything. But
Well, he works at the school district too, so I'm gonna say like that's like double duty on stressful jobs. So,
and he works in IT, so we rely on his IT expertise.
yeah,
sometimes.
he's
Yeah.
I've
But
worked with
great
him.
asset. But to set the record
Wonderful
straight,
person.
he is a part-time dispatcher.
Okay.
He is paid for his time.
Thank you for that
Yes,
clarification.
fire entities that we serve by Ccom. And one of the things I want to share this as it relates to the budget is Ccom's reach, its service reach within the county and within the region is growing year by year. In fact, we anticipate possibly to bring on some more subscribers in the coming years. Right now, we dispatch for 14 fire departments or fire districts and 1 private ambulance transport. And I have a list of all the different fire districts. Not all of them are paying. Some of them are very small. The service level they get is literally the call is just dispatched to them, and that's all they get. And by law, that's actually the county used to have to provide that, so it came over when Cochise County and we consolidated. But we have a lot of other fire districts that are paying, and you'll see in the subscriber fees there which ones are paying. And then 1 private ambulance company we brought on board last year, Healthcare Innovations. They provide private ambulance transport, mostly up on that I-10 corridor, northern part of Cochise County. That's been a great partnership. I've got a lot of good feedback from them and the service they're getting from Ccom. Law enforcement agencies. Currently, we serve Cochise County Sheriff's Office, Sierra Vista Police Department, Huachuca City Police Department, Tombstone Marshal's Office, and National Park Service. There are a couple municipalities in the county that are still feeling us out, getting an idea for whether or not this is going to be a right fit for them. Some of them are interested, just haven't committed yet. We need to be prepared for that when they come to, knocking at our door, wanting services from Ccom.
Good question.
Yeah,
Sorry.
Member
Okay.
Pacheco.
Does the National Forest Service and Park Service work together? So like, I'm thinking specifically in fire situations. So like, are they totally separate?
Okay,
and haven't
fire.
joined?
Yes, ma'am. Fire and law enforcement and the natural resources are a little bit different. So, National Park Service, it's the law enforcement only for the 2 monuments, Chiricahua and Coronado National Monuments. Those are the rangers, they're park rangers. There are LEOs, law enforcement officers for the National Forest Service. They actually get dispatched by their own dispatch center. In fact, one of those dispatchers works for us part-time. They work out of that office. They get dispatched out of that office on South 92. Then the fire part of it, that when there's an incident command set up for these major wildland fires, that does become consolidated, and it could be a number of entities that are actually handling that. Depends on the location and the primary agency. Okay, so the Ccom annual data, just to kind of show you how busy the center is. In 2020, we had 44,932 911 calls received. We had 102,918 calls received on admin, non-emergency lines. So those types of calls could be citizens calling in for something, a barking dog call, some other call. It maybe isn't a 911 call, or it could be officers, fire personnel, first responders calling in to get some service out of Ccom. Also, we have 102,765 calls for service entered into CAD. So those are the calls that we actually dispatch out, and they end up showing up on someone's screen, whether it be fire or police. This particular slide on the fund balance is going to be really critical as we look at our final budget, balanced budget for fiscal year 22. Our revenue plus fiscal year 20 balance, so we're really looking at the fund balance year to year. We've had to use that strategically over the last couple of years to essentially fund some of these big ticket IT costs. And it's working out for us in our favor. Right now, we're looking at a projected fund balance at the end of this fiscal year of $367,787. Some significant changes in this next year's fiscal budget for Ccom. One is on the personnel increase. We are looking consistent with the rest of the city. We are looking at a 4% market shift as well as a 2% step increase for eligible employees. So that could be up to a 6% raise for employees. Where I think that's going to be really critical is, as I mentioned earlier, we are recruiting. We're just over 50% staffing. This is a difficult position to recruit for. It's a difficult position to retain because the training is intense, and we need to attract people career-minded or in this as a career. And obviously, we need to stay competitive on the salaries. Overtime increase. We did increase our overtime to cover some of the staff shortages. When we have staff shortages, we're covering shifts. They're actually currently working 12-hour shifts right now. There's some automatic overtime built in right now. We want to eliminate that, and our full staffing model will eliminate that, and we just need to get there. The other demand that we're going to see this coming fiscal year, and this will be probably the last time we really have to worry about this, and that's the training time cost associated with the implementation of ProQA. There's a lot of training for the dispatchers that goes with emergency medical dispatching, and now there's also a law enforcement module we'll be going live with in July. And there's some mandatory training and certifications that the dispatchers actually have to pass exams, and in order to get that done and maintain our minimum service levels at Ccom at 50%, it's costing some overtime to do that. Mr. Mayor.
And where does that training take place? And the reason I asked that question is, have we talked to our friends at Cochise College about potential qualified certification for the training that they got, and how's that work?
Yeah, I'll answer that from a couple of perspectives. So the ProQA training is actually occurring here locally. We're doing it at actually one of the fire stations. That's actually done by the company, the software company. So that one, the actual dispatcher training.
It's a proprietary. Oh, gotcha.
Correct.
Okay.
But to segue into the other part of your question, we do believe Cochise College is an endeavor we need to pursue for training, and it's a partnership we'd like to pursue in the coming years. We have not really approached them formally about it, to my knowledge, but we would like to. I think it would be a good addition with the law enforcement academy we have now, that this type of training, and maybe it'd be nice to see a couple different pathways, whether it be
we at least need to open the discussion,
Yeah.
if nothing else.
Yeah, they already are involved, obviously, and we are with them with the fire service, and now we have the law enforcement academy, and it seems like this would be a natural offshoot of those two programs.
Yes, absolutely. And the other third major change was the Motorola SUA2. Okay, that's kind of what I was alluding to earlier as far as the technology costs, the software the upgrades for the system. It looks on paper that we had an increase this coming next year. We actually didn't. Last year, the actual number was in the $700,000 range. We had used prior fund balance as well as a grant to offset some of that. So we are coming down on that, and we are also starting to pay that off. So we should see in the coming years that hope to see that cost go down. It's technology. There will always be costs associated with it. Something else will come down the road that we will have to deal with. But I use that as an example with the Ccom budget. It is like a lot of departmental budgets. It's literally a year-by-year analysis that is line by line. Because example, chairs in the dispatch center. These dispatchers are sitting in these chairs for 12 hours at a time, and we need to buy some comfortable chairs. But we don't have to replace those every year necessarily. So we look at that. Do we replace them this year? Can we take that, zero that out for the next couple of years? Maybe just a small replacement budget, stuff like that. So we have to go through this every year meticulously to make sure that we're just not leaving in there the same amount every year if we're not going to spend it. We owe that to all the partners and agencies that are involved in this endeavor. Fiscal budget by category, just to give you kind of a breakdown from fiscal year 21 to fiscal year 22 and the change, the delta. Obviously, the personnel budget is going up by about $95,000. Travel and training we have reduced, and part of that is that $15,000 amount was more for full staffing and we have a dispatcher 1 and dispatcher 2 position. And that growth and that movement from 1 to 2 is, I think, really important for morale. It gives them some benchmarks to work toward in their career. And there are some training requirements, very specific training requirements to get there. So we budget, so we make sure that those opportunities are available for them to get those training from APCO and other professional organizations. But when we're at 50% staffing, I know next year we're not going to spend all that. We need to get those dispatchers just hired on and get the initial training and get them proficient at dispatching. So it's a reasonable decrease. Association memberships, those pay us a lot of benefit in actually our training costs as APCO members. We get reduced costs at some of this outside professional training. IT services, that has decreased by about $130,000. Building maintenance has decreased by about $8,000. Again, we're looking at different building-related issues, whether it be HVAC, and other matters that need to be are in need of repair. We had last year we had a need to install an emergency exit that wasn't in that building that needed to be there. So obviously we got that taken care of this fiscal year, and we're looking at those things and making sure that the budget adequately will address what's coming next year. Legal and insurance, just a slight increase. Specialized supplies, we had a major decrease. We went through and looked at about $15,000 decrease in specialized supplies projected for next year, mainly because we're looking at what we have on hand, whether it be office furniture, chairs, and fixtures for these consoles, and we are set to get us through for at least another fiscal year. Carryover. We have one particular project that we do need to carry over for the coming year, at least half the funded amount, and that is an upgrade, repeater upgrade for Fire West. That particular project has been approved by the JPA board. However, it just cannot be completely finished this fiscal year, so half will be funded this year, and then upon project completion next year, we will pay the second half, and that's what the $32,244 is. So that's just a carryover for the following year.
Location, Chris?
Yeah, it's on the west end of town, on the west end tower. And so for our major change in budget amount, we're looking at a decrease in $31,445.02 from the previous year. So our final fiscal year 22 budget for Ccom is $2.6 million, just a little over $2.6 million. And just to give you a breakdown of the contributions from the various partners. One thing I will go in a little more detail on is the fund balance of $120,000. We are going to apply some of the fund balance from this fiscal year to next year on the contributions from both the City of Sierra Vista and Cochise County. And we are splitting that $120,000 fund balance at 64%, 36%, like we've been doing consistently between the county and the city.
Okay, and Mayor and Council, just for your knowledge, we budget Ccom the same way we do the city budget. We budget for full staffing and salaries, so the vast majority of fund balance comes from unfilled positions during the course of the year, and even though we have to pay overtime, we still generate fund balance as a result of how we budget. The fund balance was used last year to help offset the costs of the SUA2 Motorola radio software project, which was about a $750,000 hit to the budget. We're paying the bulk of the remainder this fiscal year, so we're using $120,000 of the projected fund balance to help pay that. Those large costs will be gone going forward then, so we'll actually should see decreases in the budget moving forward. So that process seems to be working very well for us.
Commander Heiser, I have a question. On the contributions, especially on the next slide down, You have principals, partners, and subscribers. Now, how are these contributions determined?
Okay. Councilmember Johnson's good question. So that points toward the IGA that's in place, actually, that governs Ccom. So we have an IGA in place that defines what a subscriber and what a partner is.
Okay.
And there's a formula that was established, and it was actually done prior to Ccom going live, done in committee format, actually, by the operations committee and this JPA board to determine those rates. Now, what we have seen is that we need to revisit those rates, and so actually one of the big priorities, and it's been recognized by the JPA board as an objective for next year, is we're going to put together a committee to reevaluate those rates and the fairness and equity for all the partners in this endeavor. And to give you an example, some of the very small fire departments are really feeling this a little more than the larger agencies, and they feel that the formula that's applied might be a little harsh on them, given their operational situation. So we want to look at something, but I think we would all agree that it's good business to have one established formula that we can follow across the board, and not do case by case and individual exceptions and whatnot. So that's our endeavor for next year.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and it was a very difficult thing to stand this up and try to come up with a fair system for the subscribers. As Chris mentioned, we have a lot of small fire districts throughout the county, very, very small, and they were getting the service essentially for free through the sheriff's office all this time. Of course, being in a combined entity now, we're looking for payment, and even Palominas, for example, was getting a very good deal. So you see now they're set at $10,000, and that really hurts their budget to do that. So we're trying as a board to be very flexible and negotiate when we bring people on board, because obviously we want to provide the service, but we also need to be fair to all the subscribers at the same time, which is why we need to review the formula for the subscribers. And of course, the more subscribers we get, the less the city and the county as principals then would have to pay going forward.
Now, regarding subscribers, are we actually affirmatively going out and seeking, like Bisbee, that's using a different service, or?
The answer is yes, we do that, and Chris mentioned a couple of municipalities. Wilcox is the one that seems to be most interested right now. They had a cost factor with regards to their PSAP seats that Susan mentioned earlier, that they had already entered into a contract for. That contract will be expiring, and they will now be looking at joining Ccom, and we believe that we could save all these entities money if they join Ccom. So hopefully with a change in leadership in Bisbee, we may be able to approach them as well. I think probably the last one that would come on board would probably be Douglas, in my opinion, and there are issues there with regards to distance and bilingual requirements and that kind of thing that we would really need to address in order to attract them to Ccom.
All right, thank you.
That was going to be my question, was, are we doing anything to address the bilingual issue today,
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, we currently use.
especially in hiring practices?
Yeah, we currently use
Bonuses.
the Language Line has been our go-to service that we pay for. It's in our budget to attract and bilingual dispatchers is going to be a challenge, but I'm open to whether it be incentives or something of that nature. It's something we need to grow to, and it's been just in law enforcement over the years. We've always been wanting Spanish-speaking police officers. No different with dispatchers. The same thing. I think we need to look for those skill sets to be brought in. For sure. We're very fortunate that we have the Language Line to help us on that. So we literally can just bring in an interpreter on the line.
Well, and that's great, but eventually you're going to want to be able to have your own once you get everybody on board, you want to have your own organic folks.
Yes.
And have a couple Spanish speakers on each shift so that they can handle those calls.
Yes, and if we were to ever start serving border
Douglas.
communities like Douglas,
Well,
we're going to
Douglas,
need
you're
that.
gonna need
We
it.
would, we wouldn't even be prepared right now. We'd need to prepare ourselves
Yeah,
for
Bisbee
that.
too. yeah.
Ideally, it'd be nice to attract if Douglas dispatchers over, obviously, as future employees if they were to come over.
But again, long range, you're gonna have to have a training plan to make sure you maintain whatever capability you gain by bringing people from Douglas in. So,
Absolutely.
Yeah, and there's where the distance is a factor too, so we might have to look at satellite type operations and that kind of thing.
Okay.
So,
I have a comment.
Any other questions, comments?
I have a comment.
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember
Yeah,
Landry.
so thanks so much for sharing this information.
You're
It's-
welcome.
It's really cool. So at the end of last year, I had the opportunity to do a ride along with the sheriff, and I got to go to Ccom. And it was just this little nondescript building, and I go inside and I'm like, whoa,
Yeah.
all this stuff's going on, all this, it's, so busy and everything. And then being able to go, to visit the various departments like the police station and the fire service and stuff, just to kind of see how all this communication goes on. I think it's awesome to be able to see the screens and stuff, to see how more detailed information can be shared to improve efficiency and things like that. So yeah, I think it's really cool. So I always like to learn a little bit more about that.
Well, Ccom is the glue that keeps all that
Yeah.
together. It is. It really is a critical place, and I'm just honored to be part of it. Actually, it's a great endeavor. We're working hard because we want to make this, like I mentioned earlier, this is something that I think we're going to see the way of the future, and it'd be nice to make this a model for other communities to follow. And we can do that. We're going to get there.
Anything else? Thank you, Commander Heiser. It was a great briefing, and continue to do the good work. Tell the folks we appreciate what they're.
are you done?
Yes.
Yeah, he's done.
Thank you.
Tell the folks that working with you, we appreciate everything you do for us every day.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
That concludes my presentation.
Thank you, sir. We now go to item C, balanced budget, and it's, who's doing this one? I guess we, Assistant City Manager.
Should be on the bottom. Did you close it?
One thing I want to mention before Victoria starts, going back to Ccom real quickly, is the city and the county are still bearing some of the costs with regards to, for us, administration, which includes Chris's time, Barbara's time, Jen's time, and other admin staff as required. And we're doing that as an in-kind contribution. The county is also doing the same thing with regards to their IT support and infrastructure maintenance support. So we will be, during the next year, the JPA board will be working on an incremental plan to start bringing all those costs together at Ccom. But we want to do that over time so it can be absorbed by all the subscribers more easily. So, and that's something the county is very interested in pursuing as well. So you'll see that moving forward next year.
And I think that was mentioned in last year's briefing too, is that eventually we want to get to a point, like, say, 10 years out, where it's basically a pretty much standalone entity that all we do is pay cash for service.
That's the goal.
Yep.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of council. So as of late yesterday afternoon, we are pretty well balanced on the budget. So you will have a lot more detail coming, both in your draft budget book. We'll get to you the Friday before Memorial Day. We'll schedule your one-on-one meetings 2 weeks after that, and then we'll have our special budget work sessions. You'll get a whole lot of information in those work sessions and in the budget book. So for now, what we have for you is an update and a snapshot on where we're at right now. I'm going to go through just a quick snapshot on the general fund, what some of the revenue streams were in the general fund, and then go over the capital improvement projects, but we don't have the grant matched projects yet. So you will see those coming soon, though. Okay, so our general fund proposed for next year, ended up at $44,178,127, so just over $3.7 million above last year's adopted budget. And the increases and some decreases actually came from the TPT increase of just over $600,000, the vehicle licensing tax of $225,000, the decrease on sales tax, or I'm sorry, the urban revenue sharing, that's actually income tax. The decrease from that is because last year the state delayed, or the country delayed filing taxes. So people didn't have to file their taxes until July, so that's why there's a decrease, not because of lost population, et cetera. Fuel sales, we kept level this year. It's hard to tell. There was very little travel last year, so assuming that most travel is going to come back, but that will still come along slowly, we kept our fuel sales level. Our ambulance fees, we adjust those year to year based on the previous year's actuals and where we project will end for the year. So we were about $30,000 off for last year, so we just adjusted that down about $30,000. So overall, that amounts to a $3.7 million increase over last year. And I also want to point out that we kept our revenue projections at just 4% over last year's budget. We're still currently running about 15% over projected revenues, but in carrying on with tradition, we kept our projection very conservative because it's anybody's guess how the next year is going to go, if there's additional federal stimulus packages, et cetera. So we kept it conservative for those reasons. So the capital improvements that are still in the proposed budget, in the fire department, the Stryker ambulance gurneys, that's the brand name on the gurneys. They are power, lift, and lower gurneys for the fire department. And I believe that's 2 of them. It's one. It's 2 fire department radio replacements. Moving on to the IT section, $220,000 for the IT network infrastructure upgrade, $95,000. That's the replacement of the library patron computers. They are at end of life. And $115,000. That's the replacement and upgrade of the Fire Station 3 training room and the conference room. For the Animal Control Center, $200,000 budgeted for the design. That will all be funded out of donation funds. On the park side, we're replacing 2 playgrounds, the Big Castle Playground at Veterans Park and the playground that is behind the Oscar Roon Community Center, right beside the Therapeutic Rec Building. Both of those have reached end of life. If we don't replace them, we'd be just tearing them down and there wouldn't be any playgrounds there. So they both have safety issues and so they need to be replaced. Tot turf at the big playground in Veterans Park, and then $800,000, that is 4 restrooms at these throughout the sports complex, also a strategic plan item in trying to get restrooms that are desperately needed and get those porta pots out of the way.
But again, the reason the number is so high is we basically have to put in the water systems underground, septic systems underground, all the other things, because basically nothing is there. Just putting in a restroom itself would not be that much, but you have to put on all the underground infrastructure. That's why the number is so high.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, and it is 4 facilities. So we can save a little bit of money by combining all of those projects together and doing them all at the same time. In facilities, we've budgeted diving board replacements at the Cove, replacement of the police station flooring. That would be removing the carpet and polishing the concrete. The City Hall power entrance expansion, that is, last year we did the analysis of the electrical capacity at City Hall. This is the next step. We take that study and we'll be replacing the electrical system so we can plug in more than 3 crock pots at one time and not blow the circuits, et cetera.
Publicly, we may want to say, plug in more than 3 computers at a time.
Yes,
Because
Mr. Mayor, that too.
Crock pots imply that all we do is party at City Hall, which may be true when I'm not here, but that's not what I see.
No, we occasionally like to have some fun as a staff.
That's true.
Occasionally. $30,000 for the Pavilion roof replacement. The Pavilion is not that old, but unfortunately, there were issues with the contractor when it was constructed. And not to completely dig up old dirt, but we did have to break the relationship with the contractor. The construction was not top-notch, and so the roof has not held up very well, even though it's not very old. So this will replace that roof. It should hold up about 15 to 20 years and should be better than what is currently there. And Fire Station 1 and 2, their roofs are both quite a bit older than that Pavilion roof, but they're both in need of replacement, so that would cover the roof replacement on both Fire Station 1 and 2. We've worked a lot on the HERF fund, and while there will be some changes to this, you'll see in the final budget and presentation. Currently, we are still budgeted $2.5 million for the Avenida Escuela extension. With the bridge and culvert construction, Walmart will be paying for half of that culvert and bridge. We have budgeted that revenue amount against this. We have tentatively budgeted $30,000 for improvements on the Fab Avenue property. The surface water master plan is still ongoing, which will tell us what improvements are needed on that property to handle stormwater. And so this is a placeholder. We need to have a number in the budget, but we don't think it's probably far off from the eventual improvements that will be done there. We are budgeting for the next phase of Garden Avenue, the design to renovate Garden Avenue as well. And we are budgeting $932,000 to rebuild Charleston Road from the 92 intersection down to the road that leads to the college.
What do you mean by rebuild? Oh,
Question,
sorry,
go ahead.
Victoria, when we look at these numbers and these estimates, how do we come up with those? So how do we decide 932,000 is the number that needs to be budgeted?
I'll throw that over to Sharon.
As an example.
Yeah. Yeah, so for projects like this in the HERF fund, those cost estimates are generally generated by the engineers based on their knowledge of pavement maintenance strategies and what is required for each specific project.
Okay. And do we build in, like, right now we know construction costs are going way high. Do we try to, I know we don't have crystal balls, but as much as we can kind of forecast pricing and how that might factor in?
Yeah, the best answer is we certainly try to. As you noted, we don't have the crystal ball, and with oil prices doing what they're doing right now, it's hard to say. All I can really add is we would hope what goes up must come down. Mm-hmm. So we'd hope that certainly that would improve in the future and wouldn't get any worse.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Pacheco.
Thank you. Are we talking with the road, Charleston Road rebuild? Are we just resurfacing, or or are we like restructuring that road to better flow the traffic there?
It's a mix. Portions of the road are going to need a rebuild, meaning taking all the pavement, similar to what we did on Coronado Drive, mm-hmm. Here from MLK to Fry Boulevard. The section right abutting 92 is in particularly rough shape. If you've driven there recently, you know the issues. Other portions approaching the college are in slightly better shape, so we may be able to get away with what's called a mill and fill there, which is just basically to take off the top 2 inches or so of the asphalt and put new asphalt down on top. Mm-hmm. The other thing we are planning for as part of this project is the future traffic signal at the driveway entrance coming out of the Hobby Lobby, Marshalls, Plaza Vista Mall
some
area.
nice there.
And so as part of the rebuild process, we would put in the underground conduits to make that process easier and less expensive in the future.
Okay. Some good.
Okay, just general fund vehicles. Each of these vehicles would be financed out of the general fund. And Mr. Mayor, in reference to your question yesterday about why there's a discrepancy between, or $50,000 for 2 pickup trucks and $40,000 for one, the police department pickup would have the police package, lights, sirens, et cetera, on it. The community development pickup would need to have a rack for ladders and such. The engineering pickup would just be a pickup truck.
Don't get any lights?
Okay, so future budget issues, what we're looking at for next year and upcoming issues. So we talked about in the last presentation about the need for the 4% market shift for staff. It looks at this point like that would keep us at about 95% of market. So we'll keep an eye on how the market develops over the next year. It's possible we may be proposing an additional market shift next year to try and get us closer to paying staff 100% of market, which helps with recruitment, helps with retention, and so on. From my discussions with colleagues around the state, everybody is in this issue. They're in the same situation. And so it's tough for everybody out there, but falling so far off market doesn't help us in any of our recruitment efforts either. As Chuck mentioned earlier, the Parks Master Plan, that presentation is tentatively scheduled for you at the next work session. So we'll go through that and all of the projects and potential strategies for paying for that plan. So that is something that you'll be seeing over the next few years in the budget. Public safety retirements and the public safety retirement system. Also tied to the market shift, we have quite a few retirements coming up, and so attracting and recruiting police officers has been a challenge for quite some time. It's been particularly challenging, and so that will remain a priority, and as well as addressing our unfunded liability. If you read David's message on the CAFR, you did see that we were able to put together almost $800,000 additional payment last year, thanks to the policy that council adopted to help address that unfunded liability. And as we went over last time, our liability is decreasing, and we'll continue to prioritize that, and we'll continue to prioritize that. Street maintenance as well, as we'll go over in the strategic plan draft next. Street maintenance will continue to be an issue, and we have some strategies to deal with that. And you saw part of that strategy already by budgeting for a larger project like the Charleston Road rebuild, in addition to budgeting for regular street maintenance. So that will continue to be a priority as well. And then finally, it didn't make it into the presentation because we just got the information yesterday morning and yesterday afternoon, but we are receiving funds through the American Rescue Plan, which we knew were coming, but we're waiting for the Treasury Department to release its guidance on how that money could be spent. That guidance was released yesterday morning, as well as our revised amount for how much the city would be getting. And so right now, the city is getting about $6.2 million in additional funds, which will be split over 2 years. We'll get about $3.1 million next year and the following year. So staff have been working on a plan for how to utilize that money, and now that we've gotten the specific guidance from the Treasury Department, you'll also be hearing our plan for how that money will be applied at the next budget work sessions.
And the key thing to note there is defining all the key restrictions on what we cannot spend it on, and making sure that that is met in the plan. So it's a little more complicated than just hearing that we got money on the way. So.
Yes, the initial guidance was extremely vague, and so that guidance from the Treasury Department we got yesterday was very important for finalizing our plan.
Is this the infrastructure thing they keep talking about?
No.
something
No,
else?
Mr. Johnson, this was the package that was passed in January or February?
Okay.
February.
Now, the infrastructure hasn't got through Congress yet.
Just keep printing it.
Print that money. Yes, ma'am.
Print that money.
Sharon, if for the Charleston Road rebuild, is that just for that first portion when you're coming off of? It's not, because the rest of the Charleston, the majority's in good shape.
Correct.
It's
It would
just
be
that
the segment
900,000 is just for that smaller segment.
from 92
Yeah.
to Cochise College, so to
Yeah,
Columbo.
that-
Yeah.
Just for that section.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. I know it seems like a lot. It's a 5-lane
Those,
section
okay.
of roadway, and a portion of it needs to be a full depth replacement.
And that should give you an idea how much replacement roads cost, even though we're not replacing the entire stretch. It's very expensive. And I hope the 900,000, quite frankly, will cover it.
I just had to doubly check. I know she.
I know, it's amazing.
Yeah.
Question, follow up on that.
Go ahead.
Also, on that, does the HERP funds, this doesn't include any of the routine other road replacement or fixing that we're doing?
The other road replacements are budgeted separately in the O&M account. This is in the capital account.
Any other questions? Final comments?
Okay, so thank you for your patience as we work through all the details in a budget. It's much more difficult to put together a budget when you actually have some revenue to work with and the number of projects we're doing. So that's very exciting, but it takes a little more time. So you have a lot more information coming. May 28th, you'll see your tentative budget books passed out. In about a week after that, June 7th through the 9th, Rochelle or Yvette will be calling you to schedule meetings to ask if you want to have a meeting. If you don't, that's fine. June 14th through the 16th, we schedule 3 afternoons for our special budget work sessions, and we haven't always gone 3 days. Sometimes we have, so it's as much time as you need to work through the budget and get all of your questions answered. June 24th will be your tentative budget vote. July 22nd is your final budget vote and property tax hearing, and then you'll wrap up the process on August 12th with your property tax vote. And that concludes our budget presentation.
Seeing no further questions, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we're next up with our draft strategic plan, and I'm sure it's you again.
You did.
You're earning your pay today.
Okay, after everyone's feedback at the last meeting, I went through and made the requested changes. The 2 items I want to revisit specifically were the item on, or the very first goal on pavement condition index surveys. So Sharon and I sat down with Carolyn and discussed this one quite a bit and drafted the goal you see before you to more specifically address what we think Ms. Humphrey's goals were. So that one was rephrased as prioritizing reducing the number of road miles of city-owned streets that fall into that very poor or poor classification on the PCI and maintaining higher classifications to the extent possible. So I want to show you what we can do so the information we'll be able to share with you. So Brian, if we can switch over to the overhead here real quick. So Blake was able to take the PCI survey and all of the numbers and translate that to this GIS map that gives a visual and a measurement on the condition of all of the streets within the city. So we'll be able to measure how many road miles are in each category. And as we do another pavement condition index survey and get a baseline number on how things have changed since this one was done, and we do another one in a couple of years, we'll be able to measure how we have moved the needle on improving those streets at the bottom end and how we have done maintaining the ones at the top end. So we'll be able to show you pretty graphs and calculate those numbers. And then the next one too is developing the strategy and the financial plan on exactly how we're going to address that. So that is step 2, or step 1 really, on how to go about achieving this goal. Okay, Brian, we can switch back, please. Thank you. And so I'm ready for feedback on any part or portion of the plan.
Sir.
I noticed that my Economic Development Commission on page 4 of 7 has changed to a Economic Development Advisory Group. I don't know, we had a discussion about whether it's going to be a commission or an advisory group, and I would suggest that we change that back to Economic Development Commission for the time being, until we can iron out the details.
Well, to me, we need to iron out the details. But what we call it doesn't make any difference to me, because we have to decide whether it's going to be a commission in the regular commission format or whether it's going to be beyond that. And I think it probably needs to be beyond that.
Well, I proposed it initially as a commission, so.
Dan?
So I was the one that suggested changing it, and the reason why is because I felt like commission was real restrictive and narrowing us into a lane. And I know, because commission means something very specific within the city, so I felt like another word might help us broaden so we can get more choices on what we want to do. And it still may be a commission, it may be a task force advisory group. I just didn't want us to be narrowed by verbiage.
All right, well, my proposal was for a commission that had some teeth, and it seems like the language is already being watered down. So I guess I'm in the minority.
And that was not my intent, Mr. Johnson. It was to make sure we had as full amount of options as possible.
This is still leaving it open to being a commission.
To being whatever we as a council decide it should be.
All right. Well, just want to make the record.
All right, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Johnson, the council has a policy on commissions right now, which, you know, the way that the commissions are being used may not necessarily fit what you're trying to achieve with your goal, because a commission right now is a group of 5, and it works through the city manager and the staff. So whereas you have like the Parks and Rec Commission and the Planning and Zoning Commission, which are regulatory in nature, that are direct reports to the council. So that's the way the current council policy reads with regards to how they're used. So essentially, you know, the commissions are working with staff, and then we report to the council via the you know, executive report and that kind of thing. A task force is more designed for specific things that can be much broader in nature and have you know, different, you know, membership or a larger membership. And an advisory group can be set up and established by council to meet whatever needs you need. So there are different connotations to the language, and I think the word advisory group is used here in a broader sense until you guys determine the vehicle that you want to use. Nonetheless, the concept of having a focus on economic development is in the plan.
Anybody else? So I'm just going to ask about next steps. In the past, once this was basically up for approval for the council, and the council agrees with the verbiage essentially, we do a cascade with each of the department heads, and they come back and find out what the sub-objectives are and those kind of things. Is that the next step? What's the next step?
The next step, Mr. Mayor, not hearing any further desire to revise any of these items, it will go on your next council meeting for approval. Then I will take it and assign objective leaders to each one of these, and you'll get back the list with the objective leaders and the implementation plan.
Okay. And then after that, every 6 months, we get an update as to what the status is, right?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. We next go on to item E, which is the report on recent trips, meetings, and future meetings. Friday, I was a little disappointed that the League of Cities and Towns is going to have a Zoom meeting for their board meeting. I was hoping to go to Phoenix and get out of town for a day, but it saves me the drive, so that's good. But that's the only immediate thing on my schedule, and having looked at the agenda just prior to coming to this meeting, it's pretty much just routine things, like approving the budget and a few other things that they normally do. And they also talk a little bit about the upcoming League of Cities and Towns get together in August? I didn't bring the dates up here.
August 31st.
August 31st, end of August at the Biltmore Hilton in Phoenix. It's Phoenix's turn to host. So I would encourage people to, when they come up with what the schedule is, I would encourage you to look at the schedule and plan your time accordingly up there. One of the things I will be doing, I will be making a couple of requests on my behalf for information items and classes, seminars that they have while we're up there to help train new council people. One of the things I want to do is make sure people understand what the role of the treasurer is in managing some of the funds that we have as cities and towns. And there's a couple other specific things that I'm gonna recommend they bring people in to do the little mini seminars on issues that would be of interest to new council people particularly. But if you have ideas of things that you want to know about that deal with government, now is the time to submit those to the League of Cities and Towns. And they make the arrangements for the speakers and all the other stuff to come in. So it's not just a party time. There's an education piece to this as well. Anybody else on recent trips, meetings, future meetings? Ma'am.
So just on the league, talking about the league again, on the league committee, and I discussed this, I think, in a call, but other council members weren't there, is still working on the Military Affairs Commission and how that relates to military installation funding. I worked on re-energizing the Public Safety Courts and Military Affairs Commission, and they seemed to understand the importance and will be working to also relay to the governor how important it is that we reconvene the Military Affairs Commission. So that is an ongoing process that I'm continuing to work on, and we will just keep pushing along.
Ma'am.
I attended the Budget, Finance, and Economic Development Committee with the league, and it sounds like their staff is still working on one of the issues you brought up with the income tax changing and affecting us greatly. Something they have to do more research on, but they are working on it. But they did bring up Senator Gowan's affordable housing tax credit that passed unanimously through the Senate and the House, and said that they think it might not get signed, but it will still make its way into the budget in a way.
Well, yeah, they haven't worked out the budget yet. They're still gnawing on that up there. I will share. I think I mentioned to somebody that the issue on the hummingbird name got to the governor's desk. I don't know whether he signed it or not, but I did send a thank you note to Ms. Griffin on our behalf for that and allowing us to work on an ADEQ bill that wasn't right for us as a community, and we were able to get some changes made through her office. I also sent a thank you note to her seatmate, Becky Nutt, and she did a good job for us on the community colleges. There was, as you know, the community colleges are now authorized, and this one has been signed by the governor, to have 4-year programs. And there was at the time I talked to her, and hopefully we provided some assistance to her. There was a big dispute between Pima and Pima College and University, and Maricopa College and ASU, and they were going to basically end up cutting that, killing that bill because there was a dispute. We had to talk some strategies and got her to get in there and get this pushed through so that community colleges now can start authorizing 4-year degrees. And my argument, of course, was nursing and for rural communities, it's always been a shortage, always been a problem. They limit the number of nursing students, et cetera, at the universities, and there's a number of other things. So I had a good talk with J.D. Rottweiler, the president of Cochise College, and they appreciated the fact that we got involved, and we talked about how to proceed in the future on a number of areas where they need to identify the need, figure out what the financing and the support of the college is, and working through that. So I think that's a very good thing for our future as a rural community with a 4-year community college. So those are all good things. Anybody else? All right, future discussion items. Obviously, we're going to see our plan, our strategic plan again, and we see the Parks Master Plan next week. We got anything else coming up that we need to be aware of?
Mr. Johnson's request on the economic development. The economic development.
Yeah, well, yeah,
commission,
that'll be future discussion as well as we go through the strategic plan. Okay.
Can I just share that Thursday is going to be my last council meeting. I'll be resigning my seat, so I won't be on council anymore.
Yeah, we're very sorry to hear. We're very sorry to hear that. We're glad you can still be in the community and your family. And there's specific procedures we have to do as a council. We got so many days since when we get an official resignation. We have to meet and do some things, and there's a very strict process that we go through. So staff is already preparing for what we need to do, and we hate to, of course, see you resign, but we know it's the best for your family.
Yep, we've got a house, and it's unfortunately not in city limits, and so we're closing on it, and so I have to resign. So that's how it is.
Right. Well, that's gonna be a sad day. Yes, ma'am.
Victoria, do we have the Better Bucks presentation scheduled so council can hear about that in one place?
Not yet, but we will.
Okay, thank you.
And I'll just mention with the meeting with the I'm forgetting the name, all the charities that met on Friday, the joint service clubs on Friday. He gave a presentation, Corporal Borgstead, and Chief, he did a very good job. And while we were at the presentation, one of the things he mentioned that they were looking for a local charity, nonprofit, to help with this and take it over and run it on a regular basis. And they had one young lady say, "Hey, we need to talk." So it was a good productive briefing and a good productive potential assistance from the community for the Better Bucks program. So that's still alive and running.
Okay. That's good
Anybody
news.
else? Yes, sir.
I've been in touch with Brandon Martin. He's run for Congress and was recently defeated by Ann Kirkpatrick. He's established an organization called Keepers of Liberty, which is to provide civics lessons to community groups and schools and so forth. I've been in touch with him. He would like to address the council. He is getting an event together for September 11th that will be held in Veterans Park. I understand that he's been in contact with Library and Leisure Services on this particular thing, and he would like to address the council during the call to the public.
And obviously, you can do that at any time.
Yes, yes, I just wanted to give everybody a heads up why he would be here.
Okay, great. Anything else before the council? Seeing none, thank you for being here. Meeting's adjourned. See you.